You're listening to the Security Matters podcast. I'm David Puner, a senior editorial manager at CyberArk, the global leader in identity security. While the casino floor in Las Vegas buzzed with a din of light and sound, the real action unfolded quietly behind the scenes. A polite caller reached the help desk with a simple story and a confident voice. In just 10 minutes, an administrator account was reset, a password changed, and two-factor authentication fixed. I'm saying that with air quotes. No malware, no zero-day exploit, just trust, expertly manipulated. Hours later, attackers held the keys to half the strip, locking systems, choking operations, and demanding a payout. This is the face of modern cybercrime. It's not computers attacking computers, it's people attacking people. With keyboard scripts and call centers, they exploit trust and identity to make lies feel true and doors swing open. Our guest today is Eric O'Neill, the former FBI spy hunter who famously brought down Robert Hanssen, one of America's most damaging spies. In his first appearance on the podcast, Eric revealed how to catch a malicious insider. This time, we dive into his new book, Spies, Lies, and Cybercrime, exploring how attackers weaponize trust, why pressure is their sharpest tool, and how to think like a spy and act like a spy hunter before the punch lands. Here's my conversation with Eric O'Neill. Eric O'Neill, former FBI spy hunter. Welcome back to the podcast. Appreciate you coming back on.
David, it's great to be here and to talk about spies, lies, and cybercrime.
Excellent. And there is so much we could talk about. I just finished reading your new book, Spies, Lies, and Cybercrime, and it is really a great read. And I recommend it really to anyone because I've been working in the cybersecurity realm now for 5 years, and it certainly was eye-opening for me. I would imagine that most everybody is going to find something in here that they could use from an actionable insight standpoint and take back to their own personal cyber hygiene.
Well, that's great to hear because that's why I wrote the book. For insiders and people who don't really understand this world, I wanted it to be just as effective for someone who is a chief information security officer running an enterprise and somebody who's a consumer, a grandfather, a teenager, a parent, somebody breaking into business who wants to protect their data and their wallets from cyber criminals. And the whole idea was to tell stories. So it reads like a true crime thriller, but you will remember those stories and remember how to identify the attack and act like a spy hunter to defend against it.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of great advice and tips for parents, as you mentioned there. I'll be having some conversations with my kids this weekend, that's for sure.
Yeah, look at their phones. That can be a very sobering moment when you say, hey, I would like you to unlock your phone and let me see your apps. Most parents will be shocked.
Yeah, I imagine so. So to dive right in then, with your background as the FBI ghost or undercover operative who helped bring down one of America's most notorious spies, Robert Hanssen, which we discussed in depth the last time we spoke a couple of years ago, and now as an author and advisor, you've seen firsthand how trust can be both a weapon and a vulnerability. How do you see trust being manipulated in today's cyber landscape?
That's a great question, David, because it all comes down to trust. And in fact, for years, I've been saying that data is the currency of our life. In fact, that was one of the earliest titles for the new book, but that's changed. It's really trust. Trust is the most important thing that we have. Trust that the person that you're talking to is a real person. Trust that the business transaction isn't a fake or a scam. And, if we can empower trust with cybersecurity, we can help make the world safe from cyber attacks because so many of these attacks, in particular cybercrime and espionage, are using deception to get us to trust something that isn't true and that ultimately harms us, whether it's a scam or a counterintelligence attack or a terrorist attack. It all goes back to trust. And what a spy wants to do is exploit that trust by wrapping us up in a deception that is so perfect we never see it coming.
And of course, the underlying theme is trust nothing, verify everything, which ties back to zero trust. Is that inherent to human nature?
It's not. We tend to trust, especially on the internet, which is too bad because that's the place you absolutely don't want to trust. And when I say verify first and trust only when you verified it's true, that applies to everything that we receive over the internet, whether you're getting a DM on social media or you're just scrolling through your favorite reels, whether you're looking at an email in particular, which is still the number one way that business scams happen, or if even now, if you're getting a call or a voice message or a FaceTime call from someone. In the world of AI and deepfakes, we're soon, and it's right around the corner, not even going to know if the person we're talking to is a real person or not.
Which is a terrifying thing to contemplate. And I will point back to the book where all of this stuff gets pointed out, and it's definitely a lot to take in, but you also end every chapter with actionable things that you can do in order to verify, to determine something is real or not. And then lots of other websites and other resources to go and track all of that.
Yeah, the point of the book is to identify for you through storytelling. I mean, like I said, it reads like a true crime story book.
Yes, it does.
But the idea is that through the storytelling, you'll recognize the attacks when they happen to you, and they will. Maybe they have, and you need to go back in your memory, but they will happen. We are all getting scammed. Cybercrime is the fastest growing business on earth. But I want you to recognize the scam because you remember it from a story, because you saw it happen. And that's like someone is throwing a punch, right? And you see the punch coming. Now, it's up to you to decide to act or not. And you can. They teach you in the book all the ways you can block that punch before it hits you. But seeing it coming is the number one thing that protects people. When we're blindsided by an incredibly clever scam that's layering deception and imposter attacks and confidence schemes and all the different ways that spies and cyber criminals are able to exploit us, if you don't see it coming, you're going to get hit. But if you can see it coming, then you have a chance to protect yourself.
And you mentioned it in the book, and it's also been mentioned a couple of times by other guests on this podcast, but the famous Mike Tyson quote, "Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth," that definitely seems to resonate quite a bit when it comes to cybercrime.
There are two quotes in cybersecurity that are used by pretty much everyone. That Mike Tyson quote, "Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face," right? That was the one he said after the Evander Holyfield fight where he wasn't really ready and he lost. Also, the very famous military idea that no operation survives first action. The second you go operational, everything has to change. And part of that is being able to pivot. And when you can think like a spy, you understand all the ways they're coming after us, then you have the ability to pivot quickly toward the threat, understand it, identify it, investigate it, and decide on a way to act that's going to save you.
You've spent your career tracking everything from classic spies to today's cyber criminals. With the rise of AI, deepfakes, and the industrialization of cybercrime, what's the biggest change you've observed in how attackers operate, and what does that shift mean for defenders on the front lines?
I love that question, David, because it really gets into the core of how attackers are making $14+ trillion a year in dark web cybercrime. And that's where we are. And that's trillion, not billion. Mm-hmm. So that makes dark web cybercrime right now the third largest economy on earth easily, and actually bigger than Germany and Japan put together. So if the dark web was a place, its gross domestic product would be bigger than most countries on earth.
Crazy.
What attackers are doing is, and maybe I should start by just saying, let's get rid of a misconception, something that used to be the way that attacks would happen. You'd have a computer and you'd turn it on, and some sort of malware, or we used to call them virus, would infect your computer and steal your data. And it was computer to computer, right? Mm-hmm. And it happened all over. They were exploiting problems in operating systems, and you would get it from software. But someone was using a computer to attack your computer and steal the data. That's not how it happens anymore. The majority of cyber attacks, the overwhelming majority of them, are a person who uses a computer and the anonymity of the internet to fool you. And sometimes there isn't a single line of code. They're just fooling you into believing a lie is true. So, for example, when MGM, and I tell the story in the book, was attacked, and that's the biggest owner of hotels in Vegas. I didn't even realize that, MGM doesn't just own the Grand. They own like half the hotels in Vegas. By a massive ransomware attack, the attackers were able to get in and burrow into their systems with a phone call, a single 10-minute phone call to tech support that reset a username and password of a systems administrator, someone who had access to change passwords and create accounts and can do all sorts of mayhem if they go rogue. And they even were able to reset their two-factor authentication just with a phone call. And now we're seeing cyber criminals come after like you and me and everyone on the street, personal level, right? By sending emails and texts and DMs that don't even have a line of code. It'll say something like, we tried to deliver your package and we couldn't get it to you. It's being held. Call us on a toll-free number in order to get it released. And you call and you talk to a person. You don't click on a link. You don't open an attachment. You pick up your phone and you call. This happens every year around tax season with these IRS scams, right? They pretend to be the IRS. You might have gotten a text. I'm sure, David, you've gotten a million of them from a toll booth, right? From the state, right? Saying you didn't pay a toll.
Yep.
And if you don't pay right away, then we're going to cancel your driver's license or send you a massive fine. But it doesn't say click this link or open the attachment. It says call here. And now you're talking to a dark web call center, and these people are really slick and they're professionalized in how they talk to you. And they say, pay us $200 right now and we'll get rid of the fine. You won't have your license revoked. It was over $1 billion last year spent on this toll booth scam. So the scams are getting clever and clever and clever. But the point is, cyber attackers are attacking you and me, not our computers.
Right.
So we have to be the ones who are aware, recognize the attack, and defend against it.
And it's all very obvious that the attack method is via a keyboard, as opposed to something out of Ocean's 11 when they're in person, or a real life old school crime like on the Louvre. There's like less human stake in the game. Is that a way of looking at it?
Yeah, let's take the Grand Paris heist, which is fascinating, and I'm going to highlight it in my next newsletter just because it's cool. We talk so much of cybercrime, and most crime is now cybercrime, because if you're a criminal, why would you smash a bank and have the police chase you? And, eventually these Paris attackers are going to get caught. I mean, at the end of the day, it's impossible to hide from law enforcement. They find you eventually, right? But in the Paris heist, they use a bucket. They go to the second floor. They smash a window. They go in with grinders in plain sight of everyone, including guards. They smash the cases and take everything and run, jump on motorcycles and rocket away. And they're wearing masks, right? The reason the guards didn't stop them is because their training is not to get in an altercation, because they could accidentally shoot a patron, and they were patrons all over. I think they had some inside information, and often these big attacks, whether it's a inside job that's a kinetic attack, which is using your hands and physical, or a cyber attack, there can be some sort of insider that helps. But what are they going to do with all of those jewels? You can't fence them. You can't sell them. They're some of the most well-known items on earth, right? Crown jewels of France. So they're going to have to break them down and sell them piece by piece. And that's a lot of work. These same attackers could have made more money if they just went into ransomware and launched cyber attacks, right?
Yeah.
And there's almost no chance they get caught. Once in a while, we see these high-profile cases, where someone storms a bank or a vault or a museum. But more often than not, cyber criminals, or criminals in general, are going cyber because it's seen more to them as a victimless crime, right? They don't have to get aggressive. They never even see their victim. And it's incredibly lucrative. They're making money hand over fist, and it's a very low chance that they will be arrested.
Let's go back to the dark web for a moment. This hub of cybercrime. So much of today's cybercrime, ransomware, credential theft, even the sale of deepfake tools relies on the dark web as its marketplace and meeting ground. And in your book, you do a fantastic job of painting a detailed picture of the dark web as a thriving underground economy. From your actual exposure to the dark web, What's one aspect of how these cybercrime markets actually operate that would surprise most people? And how should that reality shape the way we defend against these threats?
I spend a lot of time on the dark web in the book, only because I've been speaking on stages. I'm a huge keynote speaker for decades. And in the last, 10 years, I have been asking my audiences, raise a hand. Who knows exactly what the dark web is? And maybe one or two people might raise their hands. And they're usually like an FBI agent. The fact is that there's this misconception over what the dark web is, what the deep web is, what's the difference, what's the surface web. And I detail all that, once again, with storytelling in the book. In fact, I take my readers over the shoulder of a dark web spelunker, a friend of mine who was paid by the DoD to become a bad guy, to become a big drug trader, so that he would have the credentials to go in there and not get assassinated by cyber criminals. And we go way down into the dark web. Something that would surprise you is you can buy anything there. It is literally depravity at the touch of a button. That's a quote I use in the book from my friend. Cybercrime is huge. If you want to get into cybercrime and you're industrious and you learn how to splunk into the dark web using the Tor browser and Onion websites, and you're in the know, you know where to go. It's not like there's a Google for the dark web. There are, but they're all fake. They're just there to get people who are novices. And, as soon as you click a link on that web search engine for the dark web, you're infected. You have to know. So you need to be in the clubs and the message boards and the group chats that tell you, okay, this website is a marketplace for this and this website is a marketplace for that. So it's very difficult to get deep into the dark web. But once you're there, it's fascinating, sobering, and very disconcerting what you can find. For example, you can buy any kind of malware on Earth. You can hire cyber attackers to launch attacks for you, like DDoS attacks or to breach organizations for you. There are e-learning platforms if you want to become an affiliate of a ransomware group where you can download toolkits and start launching ransomware attacks. And you just have to pay 25% up to the cybercrime syndicate. Outside of cybercrime, it's the biggest drug trade on Earth. It's the biggest human trafficking trade on Earth, which is just devastating, the horrible, depraved things you can see in there. Pornography is the most looked up thing on the dark web, and it is all kinds of terrible things. And now with the advent of AI, people are just creating their own. And of course, drugs and guns. You can buy any kind of gun you want. You can buy plans for your own 3D printer if you want to build a ghost gun, a plastic. It'll fire once, but the dark web is this massive sprawling system. And something that a lot of people ask that might be really interesting is it can't be shut down. And the reason it can't be shut down is part of the internet. In order to shut the dark web down, we would have to shut off the internet. And that would make everyone on Earth completely miserable.
Wild. It's the upside down internet, essentially. And reading the book, you take us into this world, and you mentioned people pay for this, that, or the other thing. The main method of payment is cryptocurrency. So how does that factor in? And does the fact that it's like somewhat untraceable have something to do with it?
The reason that cryptocurrency is the payment method of choice and the currency of the dark web is because it's decentralized. It's very hard to be frozen. There's no central bank that law enforcement can go to and freeze funds, right? Now, they do rush in and they work with the big cryptocurrency companies when a dark web cyber criminal or any cyber criminal is using them to freeze wallets. They can freeze digital wallets. Sometimes they can get portions, but there are full companies on the dark web who will work with criminals. There's a supply chain on the dark web. You launch a ransomware attack and you've stolen an identity and you set up a drop bank account using a fake identity, which is a legitimate bank account at a real bank using a fake identity, right? And then you change the name to whatever business you're scamming the person into depositing the money into. That person wires their money into that bank account and you immediately move it into one of these dark web marketplace companies that will start pushing it into different cryptocurrency wallets faster than law enforcement can find it. And then often into physical wallets or wallets on servers that law enforcement can't touch. And it's gone. The money is absolutely gone. Law enforcement does have wins. The FBI is very adept. I mean, they have plenty of dark web spelunkers in the FBI who get down there all the time to take down pornography sites if it's child pornography or big cybercrime syndicates. But the problem is that This is all based on a data architecture, and bad guys have backups too. So if you don't arrest the bad guy, they will eventually restore all their systems from backup and be back up and running with different websites or onion sites and different names. They'll even rebrand.
On somewhat of a tangential note, I saw in the book or read in the book how you tried to buy some cryptocurrency early on, in like 2008, 2009, about $100 worth, which would have been worth how many dollars now?
Like tens of millions. I was just going to buy 100 Bitcoin.
And you couldn't figure out how to do it, right?
I figured out how to do it, and
Okay.
I thought, oh, I'm a cybersecurity consultant and thought leader or aspiring at that time, right? Way back then.
Uh-huh.
And I should figure out how to buy this cryptocurrency. Now, it isn't like today where you can buy it through banks. You can buy it through apps. It was actually very complicated, and you needed someone who knew how to mine it to help you, and you weren't going to be sure if you were going to pay them and they would actually do the mining and you would actually get the coin delivered. So I went through all the steps and I felt like, okay, I can explain this on stage now. I'm not really going to buy this crap. It's going nowhere. And that was one of the biggest mistakes in my life, because had I bought those 100 Bitcoin, right, which would now be worth, I don't know, calculate it, tens of millions of dollars. I probably wouldn't be on your podcast. I'd own my island somewhere and it'd just be relaxing and writing books for fun. And, it's one of those things.
Our gain on your sliding doors moment there. But yeah, I could feel the sting in that one for sure.
Well, it gets worse. I mean, safest thing to do when you have a lot of Bitcoin or a lot of cryptocurrency, period, is keep it in a physical wallet that is not attached to the internet, where, it's sitting on a hard drive. And you've got it in data, and the blockchain shows that you own these coins. And so you could connect it to an exchange and sell it anytime you wanted. And people lose those drives. People forget the passwords to the drives. And so they might have millions of dollars sitting on a physical device and they can't access it. And it makes them crazy. It makes them completely crazy. Imagine if you had $5 million on a little thumb drive and you forgot the password.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I don't like imagining that, but luckily it's not my reality.
Right, mine either.
So then back to the book, which is divided into two sections. You've got Think Like a Spy, section 1, and then section 2, Act Like a Spy Hunter. What does the spy mindset have to do with cybercrime? And if we're charged like thinking like the attacker as cyber defenders and protectors, how does thinking like a spy complement that mindset?
Certainly. So, one, spies are my brand, but more importantly, in writing the book, I wanted it to be like reading something that is literally insider information, because that's what it is. I went back to my origins at the FBI Academy, how we learned to be counterintelligence investigators. And the way we learned is by having instructors who would come in from Mossad, from KGB, from CIA, from all of the different adversary intelligence agencies, right, who were defectors or our own, and would teach us their tradecraft. To understand how to counter the intelligence of an adversary, you need to understand their tactics and then know how to exploit those tactics against them. That's what made me such a great ghost. An FBI ghost, an investigative specialist, is really a spy who catches spies. It's the coolest thing you can do in the FBI. It's exhausting, it's incredibly stressful, but it's cool. And I wanted to take that cool factor and put it in a book where everyone who reads it feels like, oh my God, I could be a bad guy now. I know how to do everything they do without like actually teaching them to do it. Because what I want my readers to do is recognize all the tactics the bad guy used. That's think like a spy. Like, I see how the bad guys do it. I understand it intrinsically. I've read the stories. I've been immersed in it. And then the second part of the book is how you protect yourself. Act like a spy hunter. Now you're going to hunt those spies because you see them coming. That punch is coming towards your face, but you see it and you have time to react because you understand the attack, and then you block. And the second part of the book takes those original stories and explains how, if you knew to do these things ahead of time, if you could see it coming, these are the ways you could stop it. And by educating people, because these attacks are people attacking people through computers, by educating people, we can neutralize 99% of the attacks. Those are the attacks that cyber criminals are deploying against you and me. And we can really drain the dark web of resources, because if they don't get paid, they don't have jobs. If they can't beat us with cybercrime, they got to go get real jobs.
One of the important underlying points to all of this, though, as you mentioned, is that spies play the long game. So what does that mean for spy hunters?
The big difference between spies and criminals today is really only the outcome. They use all the same techniques and all the same tactics. And the difference is a spy will want to quietly slip into your system, steal everything they can, and slip out without ever being noticed. And they will use it maybe into the future. They play the long game. A spy wants to attack major companies. They want to attack government agencies. They want to learn information that is going to improve their country or their politics or their policies, right? That's what spying does. On the other hand, you have criminals. Same tactics. Slip in quietly. Maintain persistence, which is the buzzword for be in your computer systems for as long as they possibly can to corrupt as much of it as possible. The only difference is they don't want to slip out quietly into the night and have you never know they were there. They want to smash everything on the way out, set it on fire, blow it up, destroy it, and then say, I've got your data, I can give it back to you, or I have the key to your data, I can give you the key to unlock it, but you got to pay me, and using maximum pressure to get you to pay. Really the only difference. So you're going to see the damage far off into the future from espionage, but with cybercrime, it comes really fast because they're desperate to get paid.
Speaking of the cybercriminals wanting to get paid and demanding to get paid, ransomware crews now run like businesses, even calling victims customers, as you point out in the book. What should security and business leaders know about negotiating with these groups? And is there ever a right way to pay?
So first of all, it's always best not to pay if you can. Now, FBI says never pay, ever. And they're saying that because it makes their job harder. Every time a company pays, every time a person pays, the cyber criminal gets away from it, and then they can scale their operations and hire more people and get more people into the trade. And it's money that funnels into the dark web and builds it and makes it bigger. But if you're not prepared, if you haven't done the steps in the second part of the book, then when you get hit by the ransomware attack, you're doomed because you are not able to restore your data. You're not able to get back up and running. If you're a small business and you're down for a week and you can't make a sale and you have huge reputational damage because you've just lost all your customer data and you've got some cyber criminal out there saying, we're going to post this online for everyone to see, that could bankrupt you. And you might be faced with a position where you say, I'm going to pay. There you need someone to help. I mean, you always need someone to help when you're in a ransomware case. But I've been an advisor where we have talked to the cyber criminals and had them established, because they are businesses, they're bona fides. Like, prove to us you'll pay. And then they'll send you like a CV, like a resume. We locked all these companies. We paid all these companies. You could reach out to the companies and ask them, like, their references, right? They're always very like, of course we're going to pay. If we didn't pay, no one would ever pay us in the future. We're honorable thieves. It's like, okay, great. Yeah, right. Better not to pay, better to take those steps so that you're resilient. When you're attacked, even if you're locked by ransomware, you know enough about your data architecture to see where they went and where they landed, and then neutralize them, block them, keep them from spreading, catch them quickly, close the trap around them, kick them out, and restore to a point before they landed. That way, they haven't stolen, or what we call exfiltrated, a lot of data, so you don't have a lot of responsibilities in privacy notices or data loss notices, and you know exactly when they landed, so you can go to your backups, your very good backups, and restore, hopefully without a lot of pain. There are great backup companies that do allow this, at a point before they landed. And now, because you've planned and because you were looking for the punch and you blocked it, right? You're able to get back up and running with it's going to cost some money and a little bit of pain, but not a huge amount of pain that could cause you to go under.
What's the most difficult part of recovery after a ransomware attack, regardless of whether ransom is paid?
The most difficult part of recovery for most companies is the remediation. Something happened that allowed that attacker to get in, and now you've got to do the work to make sure they don't get in again. Companies that have spent a good amount of time with good cybersecurity advisory to understand where the holes are and to patch most of them can do this pretty quickly because they already have the architecture built to quickly find that new hole and make sure that it's not a way that the attacker is going to come right back. Companies that haven't gone through this have to start from scratch. And usually they're doing it within the pressure situation. They're doing it while the house is on fire. And you never want to be figuring out your security while it's burning down around you. But that is a very good analogy for what it feels like to be in a cyber attack. In fact, in my book, I tell the story of when my house burned down when I was in high school. Because having been in cyber attacks and having had my house burned down and lose everything I owned, right, feels a lot the same way.
There's so much to take in, and you think you can have that plan until you get punched in the mouth. And then you're on your feet or on the ground or whatever, and I'm sure your thinking kind of goes out the window. So you really got to have that plan.
You have to have the plan. You have to know what you're going to do if you're launched. And you have to train with your employees. I mean, if you're a company. If you're an individual, you have to have a plan. Like, what happens if you open your laptop and you just see the grinning skull and the message? They're all polite now, like, we have locked you with ransomware. This is the ransomware. This is the encryption we're using. This is why it would take you 52 years to break our encryption with known standards, right? But here's the good news. If you pay us X amount, we'll unlock you right away. And they'll even help you. They're very pleasant and friendly when you pay to decrypt you. You have to have that plan. Like, what are you going to do? Do you have a good backup? Is your backup in a place where the attacker hasn't been able to reach it because it's connected to your computer and corrupt that too? Can you just tell them, go pound sand and then restore from a backup and you're safe? There's obviously more to do when you're in a big enterprise or a business, but it's similar in that you have to be prepared. The one thing a lot of companies forget, by the way, is if we're locked by ransomware, how do we talk to each other? Think about that, because today, most businesses aren't all sitting in an office. They can just powwow in the conference room and discuss how they're going to deal with it. Now they can't use Teams. They can't use email. They can't use any of the ways that we connect in a disassociated work environment. I mean, we work, what do they call it now? Hybrid first?
Right.
So even if you're in the office, you have to be sitting in a conference room so your team member who's in Timbuktu can beam in, on Zoom. Now you can't do that. So how do you communicate? And if you haven't thought of that ahead of time, you're in a lot of trouble. You have companies that are all using their personal Gmail accounts.
That doesn't sound great.
Which were probably compromised because the attacker was deep in your environment, right? Or, they're like on Slack or they're on, which is better than, they're texting each other, right? To try to figure out what to do. So those are things you need to think about before the bad thing happens.
So should companies all respectively be adding their own carrier pigeon aviaries to their corporate headquarters?
Yeah, carrier pigeons are great because they're very hard to compromise with cyber. No, I'm kidding. You know what a lot of companies will do is they will use like a WhatsApp or Signal or one of those apps that at least is encrypted and they'll have it as kind of like a call tree already set up ahead of time. That's the cheap way to do it. Or you have a little bit more expensive, but a bit more secure, like a Slack channel or something like that, that's set up with encryption so that if everything goes wrong, you can just send a message to the group. I've seen it where CISOs have entire IT teams all over the world on one WhatsApp chain. And that could be a point of failure, but they're not discussing anything. It's just for emergencies. And they test it every once in a while, like everybody respond to see that everybody's actually paying attention.
Staying on the thread of the plan or planning or having a plan. In the book, you introduce the PAID, P-A-I-D framework, prepare, assess, investigate, and decide, as a practical way for organizations and individuals to defend against cyber threats by thinking like a spy and operationalizing trust and verification. What does that look like in practice, and where do organizations most often stumble in that process?
Yeah, so it's a really easy 4-step method, PAID, that you can remember because we all want to get paid, right? And you do get paid if you follow PAID. If you don't follow PAID, you get launched by a ransomware attack, and the only payment goes to the bad guy. So prepare. Take the steps ahead of time. What organizations have to do is be prepared and understand that an attack will come. It's not whether, it's a matter of when. So you're prepared for the attack, which means you've hired the cybersecurity advisor, right? If you don't have a very knowledgeable cyber team or CISO who can do it. You hire someone outside, they come and they look at your data. You've taken the steps to organize your data, your architecture, the vendors you're using, and how cybersecurity ties in to safeguard all of that. You're segmenting your data. That's really important too. You can't have everything on one drive that everyone has access to. That's a recipe for absolute disaster. You're layering your most important and expensive security around the data that matters most, and you're limiting access to only the few people who really need to see it. That's FBI stuff. That's James Bond stuff. That's for your eyes only. That way, you don't lose everything if you're hit. You only lose one compartment and not everything that you have, which minimizes the damage. It keeps the fire from spreading. So you're prepared. You've got your cybersecurity advisory. You've done your work to understand your data, and you've paid for some cybersecurity software and applications that are constantly out there working to protect you. But that's not it. You can't set and forget. You don't install something and you go, easy button, I'm done. You have to continually assess. And in the world of hunting spies, that's where analysts do their work. You assess, constantly assessing, looking for the threat, monitoring, auditing, seeing whether employees are doing weird things that they don't normally do. Like suddenly this person who works in California is sitting in China in the middle of the night, downloading terabytes of information. That's an extreme case, but that has happened, and that's a pretty good clue, right? But it could be other things. Normally they come into the office, but today they're at a coffee shop downloading a lot of stuff, and they don't normally do that. That could be a clue. But if you have the right data architecture, you can see that. So you're analyzing. And when your analysis says, oh man, we've got a problem, something could be wrong, red flag, that's where people like me come in. Investigators, spy hunters, your cyber sleuths who know how to take that little bit of analysis, that actionable intelligence that we might have a threat, and go in and see if there's a threat. You investigate. You get to be the spy hunter. And when you find that there's a threat, you work your plan and you decide to act. You have to decide to act. You can't just sit there and put your head in the sand while everything burns around you. You have to take innovative and immediate steps to minimize the damage and protect yourself or your company from a cyber attack.
Speaking of innovation, earlier on, you had mentioned AI. How have social engineering tactics evolved with the rise of generative AI and deepfakes?
It's changed the whole game. I mean, AI isn't just for using Sora to make crazy Mr. Rogers videos, which is flooding the internet right now, right?
Seen a couple of those, yeah.
Oh, God, they're everywhere. But what it does do is it is creating ever more impressive and distracting deepfakes that deceive us into believing that a lie is true. And so these have been used against families to scam them out of thousands of dollars by saying your daughter's been kidnapped, or you hear your daughter screaming on the phone. Or the newest one that's come around is you hear your sister or your daughter or, a family member's voice, right? And it says, Dad, I got into trouble. I screwed up. And you're like, what did you do? I got in a car accident. I hit this family. I think the mom is pregnant. I don't know if she made it. Look, you have to talk to this new person. He's my lawyer. And the next voice is the public defender, right? Who says, yes, your daughter is in jail. She's going to be arraigned, but it looks like she's not going to get out unless we pay bail. I got to go in really quick. The court hearing's right around the corner. This is her last phone call. I need you to wire me $5,000 so I can pay bail and get her out. And you're not going to be able to talk to her again. It's like that pressure situation. Using AI, you've just heard your daughter's voice. And now imagine you get a call from your daughter and you see on a FaceTime call your daughter telling you, I'm in trouble, or your son or your friend or whoever. Hey, look, David, I'm in Panama. I was on vacation. I got mugged. I lost my backpack. I don't have my phone. I don't have my wallet. I don't have a dollar. I'm in the lobby of the hotel. I need you to wire me some money so I can pay for my hotel room so I'm not out on the street. I'm buy a ticket home. And you're talking to your friend on a FaceTime call. You think it's really them, but really it's just an incredibly clever AI.
Which is just becoming more and more believable day in and day out, leaps and bounds.
Certainly. And it's being used against individuals. It's being used against businesses. And we are going to see an enormous amount of AI manipulation in misinformation and disinformation. Just wait till the 2028 election. That is going to be chaos. I'm hoping that just as AI continues to improve and become more hyper-realistic, cybersecurity will pivot. And I think, I predicted that relatively soon we'll all be having to install an application that provides a layer on all of the devices we use to access the internet. So your phone and your tablet and your computer systems and everything. That will be like an AI detector. It'll analyze an incoming call and incoming video chat and, scrolling through social media, even popping up an ad right on social media for that, Halloween costume, 70% off, click here, only 2 hours left, right? That says this is a fake, or, like 85% AI deepfake, so that it triggers in our mind, wait, take a moment, like figure out if this is real.
Sitting side by side with folks who have been under attack, or you're also sitting side by side with the defenders as well. How are you seeing generative AI changing the game for defenders?
One, defenders have to, just as we do, recognize that AI is being used to attack. So what's happening is cyber criminals are using AI to scale their operations, to create novel code, to scan systems, to find flaws that they can exploit. Right now, cybersecurity is also needing to pivot to deploy AI that does its own analytics. Because if bad guys are using AI for analytics, then in the side of defense, we need to be doing the same thing, right? It's tongue in cheek, but in the book, I state that if you want to create sort of a mental image of what's happening in cyberspace right now, AI versus AI, it's really like the original movie Tron. If you want to see the cybersecurity AI fighting the dark web AI with lightsabers and light cycles, go ahead. And we're hoping that the good guys win, because attackers who are using AI can move very quickly, and humans just can't respond as fast. So cybersecurity now is deploying its own AI to do the analytics and respond as quickly as the AI is attacking.
So there's been a surge in cyber threats and attacks targeting critical infrastructure like energy, water, and healthcare. What makes these sectors especially attractive to attackers, and what's one thing leaders in those environments should prioritize to boost resilience and recovery?
Yeah, in my chapters on destruction, right, I spend a bunch of time on critical infrastructure attacks. I think I start one chapter with what keeps me up at night, because that's it. A large-scale critical infrastructure attack here that turns off lights, power, water, the things that we really need. I mean, people forget that there are huge numbers of areas of critical infrastructure. There is a lot that we rely on to be safe, happy, and live well, lives that are well. And all of it's attached to the internet. So it's all a potential target, including wastewater leaving. If you don't flush your toilet and it goes away, that can be a huge problem. You can cause sickness and disease. Finances, telecommunications. Critical infrastructure is under attack right now. It is the biggest war that's being fought that no one knows about. Foreign threat actors, primarily from Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, have embedded themselves in Western critical infrastructure, launching what's called probe attacks. They haven't tried to shut it down, but they have successfully demonstrated that they can burrow deep enough to shut things down if they wanted to. And they continue, as soon as we kick them out, they continue to get back in, using all the different ways that any attacker would get into a system. And critical infrastructure is not always on brand new patched systems with great cybersecurity. It's often on aged systems with big flaws that no one has looked at in years. And so the bad guys are able to get in. So that's a threat. And in the book, I even say, I start that up all night with a story of how I put 25 solar panels on my roof and a big power wall in my basement, just so when everything goes out, I still have power. I'm the only house in the neighborhood with power, so I'm going to become incredibly popular. But and on the other hand, that's the long game, preparing for any future war, which is going to be fought in cyberspace, not here in the U.S., at least with bullets and guns. Criminals are targeting critical infrastructure, including entire cities. Because imagine the pressure to pay when a city goes down, when a power company goes down, a company that transmits oil and gas from the West Coast to the East Coast goes down, and people can't fill their cars with gas. People can't turn on the lights. People can't pay their bills. People can't get a book into the library. People can't call 911. When that happens, there is an enormous pressure to pay, and the bad guys know it. And when a city goes down, the ransom isn't, like $10,000. The ransom is in the millions of dollars. And now cyber criminals, because they've demonstrated so much success, are asking for tens of millions of dollars when they launch a sophisticated, what we call big game hunter cyber attack.
So then for organizations without a full security team, what's the first step to defending against threats? It seems so industrialized.
The good news is there are solutions out there. If you can't hire, I mean, the cost of a really good CISO right now is $300,000, and a lot of organizations can't hire that. But you can come to a good cybersecurity advisor and get a virtual CISO. You can rent somebody, and in my company, NexusShore, we do this. You can get a virtual CISO who will come in part-time and help you get to where you need to get, right? You need to restructure this way. You need to hire at least this person who can be a director of security. I've looked at your IT team. They're really good for the networking side, but they just don't know anything about cybersecurity. You need to patch that hole. And here's what I think you should do. They'll put the plan together for you. And that can be a very low-cost way to get you to a place where you're more resilient than the other 10 companies at your size and level. It's kind of like that old story, how do you outrun a bear? Trip the slow guy, right? To keep running.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that displacement of crime does work. You need to make sure that you are resilient and that you've taken the steps. And that is a low-cost way to do it. You still have to pay the cost. But the cool thing is when you do that, we've shown you can lower your cybersecurity insurance premiums by demonstrating to the broker that you have adequate cybersecurity. You've met a standard. And here it's been certified by the cybersecurity advisor. And so you're a safer bet for their insurance money. And those premiums are skyrocketing because there's so much crime. So you want to lower them as much as possible. And you absolutely have to have cybersecurity insurance. That's like a non-negotiable thing for any business to have that insurance. Because if you're hit with a cyber attack, you don't have it. You're just naked out in the wind on a freezing day. So that is a way to do that work when you can't afford an entire security team. And then you have the director of security you've hired who knows enough to know, I don't know what to do here, and I can call over to the advisor that I have on retainer. And that's the new model. Technology is helping. It's answering some of the questions. It's helping people learn a lot about cybersecurity. You can have a really good console that says, these are the threats you need to look at today, right? And you can seem really smart when you go talk to your executive team and your board, but you do need that help if you don't have the personnel in-house.
A lot of good advice. Since we last spoke a little over a couple of years ago, how have insider threats changed? And what are the earliest warning signs leaders should watch for?
Yeah, it's a great question because we sometimes forget that there still are people who get angry and go rogue. There still are people who are disgruntled. There is still corporate espionage. Sometimes your people are hired by a competitor and you don't even know it, and they're stealing data. I tell a story in my first book about Han Wen-jin, who was an American citizen who had family in China, and she was hired by the competitor of Motorola to go in. She would go in at night and steal information, and she was caught, and the company learned that she was sitting at her cousin's competitor company in China downloading terabytes of information from her company, in China while she said she was on sick leave. So trusted insiders still happen. You catch them the same way you catch a cyber spy. You have to understand your data, you have to understand who's accessing it, and you actually have to do the work to audit. One of the reasons that Robert Hansen, the spy I caught in the FBI, got away for 2 decades is the FBI just wasn't looking internally. I mean, he was using the automated case system in the database of all the cases the FBI was running in ways that he shouldn't. He was accessing things that he shouldn't, but no one was looking. And because they weren't auditing people's access, he was able to get away with it. It's the same today. If you don't have a limiter to what your employees are allowed to access, sort of a need to know, then you're never going to know when they're accessing something they shouldn't. And being able to know that is the earliest indicator possible that you might have a trusted insider. And then you can lock them out. And the worst thing that happens is they get really angry and pissed off because they can't work. And you're like, oh, sorry, we just saw an alert. Like, why are you in Starbucks today? It's like, I couldn't work from home another day, right? Well, come to the office, So those, you flag anomalies in how people are working or what they're doing or what they're accessing, and then you investigate.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that you're prepared. You can see it. You're assessing. You see that there's a problem. Somebody's doing something they don't normally do, and you investigate it. Maybe the best outcome is you apologize and say, oh, yeah, get back to work. We're turning everything back on.
So then from that sort of contemporary situation to the future, to the unknown, with quantum computing on the horizon, what's your practical advice for organizations wanting to prepare now?
Right. Know that you will have to prepare, which means that we will change our entire encryption architecture. one of the most important things for a company today is to make sure you are not the victim of a cyber attack. Do everything you can to not be the victim of a cyber attack. The reason is attackers are doing what's called store now, decrypt later. Cyber criminals are doing it. Adversarial countries are doing it. They steal information from companies, and they know they can't see the information because it's all encrypted. But when a quantum computer comes online, they will be able to open all of it up. So you don't want your data in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. By then, we'll have a quantum computer suddenly be all in the clear, completely decrypted and exploited against you. So do everything you can not to be the victim of a cyber attack. So do all the right things and you will hedge your bet there. And know that as fast as different countries and major companies are working to develop a quantum computer, there's an arms race right now between the West and China and Russia in particular. Those two are working together. There are companies who are, once again, it's all theoretical, but they are also working on quantum encryption. And that is going to be the new layer of encryption we are all going to have to adopt and use. There will be an immensely painful series of time where everybody's going to be trying to figure out a new quantum world. AI is going to start running on quantum computers, and I can't even predict how insane that is going to be.
No.
Imagine AI that moves at faster than we've ever seen before. The hijinks that bad guys will get up to there, but also the amazing cool things we'll be able to do, like movies that generate as you go. And you're immersed in it, right? Things like that. So that is going to open up a brand new world that is incredibly speculative right now, but something that everyone in security has to start thinking about today. So yeah, I spent a chapter on that in the book.
Yeah, things are certainly moving fast, and to see that coming on the horizon is a bit staggering. To wrap things up for this episode, for our listeners who want to start to think like a spy today, right now, what's one habit they can start this week?
Yeah, certainly. Here's a great one. Don't give in to pressure. So what criminals want to do is put you in a pressure situation. Every one of these attacks that is going person to person that's coming after you, these deceptive attacks, whether it's impersonation or confidence schemes, is they want to put you in a pressure situation. So that is a good clue that this might be a cyber attack. They don't want you to have time to think. Anytime you feel that pressure, stop and think. I know it's nuts. You might have someone from the IRS saying that you're going to go to jail if you don't do this right now. Or, a family member saying, I'm going to be arrested if you don't do this right now. Or that amazing deal that you've just seen for a guitar for your kid that is $200 off, but only for the next 2 hours right now. When you see that right now, stop. Take a breath, pause, and put on your spy hunter hat. Because it's very likely that that thing that's causing that pressure or that thing that is too good to be true is too good to be true, or a pressure situation to get you to click or to get you to open an attachment or to get you to do something you know in your heart of hearts you shouldn't. So don't give in to pressure, and you can identify so many of these attacks.
The book's called Spies, Lies, and Cybercrime. Eric O'Neill, codename Werewolf, former FBI ghost undercover operative. Thanks so much for coming back onto the podcast. Super eye-opening and informative, and really look forward to catching up with you again sometime down the road.
Yeah, David, I appreciate coming on the podcast and spending this time talking about my passion, which is cybersecurity, and they were great questions, so thank you for that.
All right, there you have it. Thanks for listening to Security Matters. If you like this episode, please follow us wherever you do your podcast thing so you can catch new episodes as they drop. And if you feel so inclined, please leave us a review. We'd appreciate it very much, and so will the algorithmic wins. What else? Drop us a line with questions, comments, and if you're a cybersecurity professional and you have an idea for an episode, drop us a line. Our email address is securitymatterspodcast, all one word, @cyberark.com. We hope to see you next time.